Hey Kingdom Yogis, welcome to another Christ Yoga in You video. For those of you who don't know me yet, my name is John Arnold. I'm the yoga pastor who started Christ Yoga in You as a place for yogis to get really nuts and bolts how-to information about growing in their faith and practice, deepening those two things. So not just, think what you do, but how do you go about doing it? And today is a perfect example of that because we're going to deep dive into 7 tips to reduce or eliminate wrist pain, which if you don't know is a really common problem. Particularly down dog seems to be one that a lot of folks have problems with. And we're going to look at it through the lens of kind of 3-4 different things that you can do within those 7 tips. First, we want to make sure that you are aligning properly. You may have nothing wrong with your wrist. You may be plenty strong. You just may not be using your body as smartly as you can be. We're going to look at ways you can modify if that doesn't help. We're going to look even a step further than that at some props you can use to help you out. And lastly, we're going to look at something that almost nobody talks about, making sure that you do some counterposing for your wrist. If you're not familiar with counterposing, check out my video on that. There'll be a link floating around here somewhere that you can click on to go check out that video. So let's go ahead and dive into these tips, and let's start with making sure that your alignment is good and healthy for your wrist. The very first, the most basic thing that you need to do, tip number 1, is to stack the joints, to make sure that the shoulder is above the elbow and the elbow above the wrist. Not that they're just in alignment with one another in one long line, you want that, but in many poses, they need to truly be above one another. So what I mean by that, I'll give you an example. Let's say you were in like a cobra or an up dog. If you let your body weight, you want to make sure that those are, perpendicular to the floor and on top of one another. If you let your body weight get too far forward, it's very, very hard on the wrist because you're actually trying to bend that hand backwards. So make sure that those things are stacked perpendicular to the mat for poses like plank, side plank, upward dog. Sometimes you might be doing a cobra and by design move the hands out a little bit in front of you. That's actually not going to put strain on the wrist. It's going to relieve some strain on the wrist. The key is to make sure those elbows and shoulders are not going past, like you're trying to push the forearm past 90 degrees. Very, very hard on the wrist. So stack the joints. You really want to engage the full arm, particularly in downward dog. There's some jargon out there that may just sound like gobbledygook that you'll run into where people will talk about externally rotating the upper arm while internally rotating the forearm. When I first heard that, I'm like, how is that even possible? Like you're telling me to turn my arm in 2 different directions at once. It's not really quite as crazy as it sounds. The simplest way to explain that is for you to take your arms, bring them out to the sides, and then I want you to rotate the palm up from the shoulder. Like think from the shoulder out, rotate the arm so that the palm comes up. And as you rotate the arm so that the palm comes up, you're going to feel the shoulders naturally kind of roll back. The shoulder blades will draw down and toward the spine, and the collarbones and chest are going to be opening up. Actually, this is really good to do when you go into Warrior 2, to open that up and then turn the hands over. And the moment you turn the hands over while trying to maintain the rest of the position in a stable place that you just created, you have internally rotated the forearm while externally rotated the elbow. So just do that once with me. Open it up, keep the chest and shoulders where they are, turn the hands over. There you go. That's kind of what you're aiming for when you are in down dog. And so when you go into down dog, one way you can get there to do that is if you, while you're here, you kind of rotate like you're trying to open a jar up with your hands. Right hand, you're going to be going pinky out. Your hands are fixed on the ground, but from the shoulder, you're going to rotate and you're going to see and feel the elbow come in. But then you really want to root down, particularly throughout the whole hand, like put the hand flat down to the mat, but then pull into the fingers some, particularly the index and the thumb. And when you do that, when you grab in, particularly with that index and thumb, a little bit more toward those inner fingers that are stronger, that's going to naturally pull the hand in slightly, and you're going to get that sort of counter force between the shoulders going back and the hands in. One last thing about alignment I'll mention that's called a bonus tip. When you go up into down dog, many people kind of stop here. They don't have like a clean V. See how my head is past my elbows? And when you do this, there's a lot of weight in the wrist. You may need to shorten your stance a little bit, but be sure to draw the chest through and pull those shoulder blades down and toward the spine so that you're in a really nice V. That's going to take a lot of pressure off the wrist. Just getting in proper alignment with those arms and making sure the weight is distributed more evenly between the feet and the hands may take care of some wrist pain for you right there. Give that a try. Let me know what you think. You'll have to play around with it, but once you get used to it, if you're somebody who's been sitting in practice, and I was one of these folks, the teacher would say, well, down dog's a resting pose. I'd be like, resting? I'm dying here, okay? Well, I wasn't engaging my arm fully, and I wasn't bearing the weight evenly. So yeah, you'll be way overworking downward dog if you're not doing the things that I just described about where you distribute weight and how you use your arms. Okay, let's move on out of alignment. Hey, I hope you learned a lot in this video, and I want to make sure that you understand it's just one part of a 4-part little mini course I put together on how to avoid wrist pain. I put all those videos in a single playlist that you can access next to this little short video, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Live fit, faithful, and epic for the Lord. Until I see you then. Bye now.